There is a town in outback Queensland where the local council will hand you a free block of land if you agree to build a house and live on it for 6 months. And in the middle of the worst housing crisis this country has seen in a generation, almost nobody is taking the offer. That gap between knowing something is cheap and actually choosing it is where the most interesting story lives. While people sleep in cars in Brisbane and queue for rental inspections in Melbourne, while Sydney's median house price sits above $1.5 million, there are regional towns across Australia making offers that should be impossible to ignore. Towns where houses list for $120,000, $80,000, sometimes $50,000. Towns where councils are offering cash grants, where states are paying teachers $50,000 to relocate, where health professionals are being handed $20,000 just to show up and work. And millions of Australians are looking at all of it and saying, still no. Before getting to the towns, it is worth building the complete picture of what is actually on the table. Because most people see the headline, free land or a $12,000 grant, and never do the full maths on what these things add up to when stacked properly. Start with the age pension. From March 2026, the full age pension for a single person is $1,200.90 per fortnight, $31,223 per year. For a couple, it is $47,070 combined. It is indexed twice yearly and arrives automatically. Add rent assistance. If you are renting privately, the maximum is $188.20 per fortnight on top. Number 1. Quilpie, Queensland. Quilpie sits about 1,000 kilometres west of Brisbane in outback Queensland, with a population of around 800 people. It has been described, with some poetry, as the end of the line, because the train from Brisbane literally terminates here, and that detail carries a kind of weight that will make sense later. The town has 2 supermarkets, a butcher, a baker, a newsagent, 2 schools, an early learning centre, and a pub that has been going since anyone can remember. There is a genuine community here built around opal mining and pastoral farming, self-contained, self-reliant, and entirely comfortable with not needing approval from Brisbane to function. The Quilpie Shire Council's homeowner grant is real and ongoing. $12,500 to any new homeowner who builds a property valued under $750,000 and lives in it for at least 6 months. In a town where residential land blocks sell for around $12,500, the mathematics are striking. The council is effectively saying, take the land for nothing, build your home, stay for 6 months. The grant covers the land entirely. When the program launched, the council's CEO stated publicly that if you are looking to retire and want an affordable home base, or you are a young person wanting a foot on the property ladder, you would be hard-pressed to find a better deal anywhere in Australia. He was not wrong. What people who actually live in Quilpie say about it is worth hearing. The community calendar stays full. Rodeos, race meetings, musters, markets, events the community created because they are the community, and making things happen is simply what they do. The famous Coomber hot artesian springs sit just outside town, where water rises naturally from the earth at 40 degrees. One of the quietly extraordinary things about outback Queensland that most city Australians have never experienced. NBN connectivity, the council confirmed, is on a par with city regions, which changes everything for people whose work or family connection runs through the internet. The honest trade. Quilpie is genuinely remote. The nearest significant hospital is around 2 hours away in Charleville. The summers are serious outback heat. The social world is small, 800 people small. The end of the line is both literal and slightly metaphorical. You choose to be there, or you are simply not there. Number 2, Cobar, New South Wales. Cobar is different from Quilpie in one important way. It is not just offering you a cheap place to be, it is offering you a reason to stay. Located at the crossroads of the Kidman Way and the Barrier Highway in central western New South Wales, about 700 kilometres northwest of Sydney, Cobar has a population of around 4,000 people and an economy built on genuine, active mining: copper, lead, silver, zinc and gold. These are not historical remnants. The mines around Cobar are operating, employing people and paying well. The median rent in Cobar sits at around $150 to $200 per week. In a country where the national median rent has climbed to nearly $700 per week, Cobar is offering residential housing for roughly a fifth of that cost. The town has a real hospital, a real high school, a community pool, sporting clubs across multiple codes, and a lake right at the town's edge that locals use for skiing and wakeboarding. Residents describe a community that is motivated, engaged, and genuinely invested in the place they live. For a retiree with no need for a mining wage, Cobar's low rent means the age pension plus concessions provides a significant monthly surplus. For someone still working or doing remote work, the ability to live on $150 a week in rent while earning anything approaching a regional or mining salary is a financial position that most capital city Australians would not recognise. The honest trade. 700 kilometres from Sydney is not a weekend decision. The mining economy is still a commodity economy, and commodity prices are still volatile. If copper prices fall significantly and operations reduce, Cobar feels it. But for people who have done their research and understand what they are choosing, Cobar represents something the general narrative about regional Australia consistently undervalues: a functioning, employed, community-oriented town at a price point that should not exist. Number 3. Peterborough, South Australia. Peterborough is a historic railway junction town in South Australia's mid-north, about 280 kilometres from Adelaide. Population around 1,600. It has a GP service, a pharmacy, a supermarket, a pub, a school, and a community that has mostly been there long enough to know who is passing through and who has arrived to stay. 3-bedroom homes in Peterborough list for between $50,000 and $100,000 in 2026. Not renovated show homes, not heritage curiosities, actual livable 3-bedroom houses on sealed streets with power and sewerage connected. Council rates on a property in this range sit at around $400 to $600 per year. Here is the maths that almost nobody in housing crisis coverage ever does. A retiree sells a Sydney apartment conservatively for $700,000. They buy a house in Peterborough for $80,000 cash. They bank $620,000. At even conservative term deposit rates in 2026, $620,000 generates around $31,000 per year in interest, which is almost exactly the same as the full-age pension. They now have the pension and the investment income in a house they own outright with $600 a year in council rates and zero rent. That is not a marginal improvement. That is a complete restructuring of their financial reality. The honest trade. Peterborough is genuinely small. Services are limited to the basics. There is no cinema, no specialist medical centre. The nearest full hospital with emergency and surgical capability is around 45 minutes to an hour away. The town carries the slightly hollow feeling of communities that were larger once and have not recovered that scale. None of that changes the maths, and none of that changes the fact that the offer being made here is extraordinary by any rational financial measure. Number 4, Regional Victoria, the teaching incentive. This section is different from the others because it is not about a single specific town. It is about a structural offer currently sitting on the table across dozens of Victorian regional communities, and that almost nobody in the capital cities is picking up. Victoria's Teaching for Impact program offers up to $50,000 in financial incentives to eligible teachers who take up hard-to-staff positions in regional and rural Victorian schools. Staged payments. Real jobs. Real communities that genuinely need you. In a regional Victorian town where the median house price might sit between $250,000 and $400,000, where the commute to work is 5 minutes instead of 90, where the classroom has 20 students instead of 30, and where after-school involvement is not an optional extra but the actual fabric of how the school works, it is not only teachers. New South Wales has offered up to $20,000 for health professionals, nurses, allied health workers, GPs to relocate to rural areas. Western Australia's Country Health Service has run active relocation incentive programs. Queensland Health covers various relocation expenses for health professionals moving regionally. Every state has some version of this. Critical services are understaffed. Money is on the table. The positions sit unfilled for months, sometimes years. The honest trade. Research into why these programs are underutilised finds the same answer consistently. It is not the money. It is the perception. Young professionals who built their identities around city life carry assumptions about what a regional posting means for their career trajectory and social world. Moving regionally feels like stepping off the path, even with $50,000 on the table, even when research consistently shows that regional teaching roles often accelerate professional development faster than overcrowded urban schools. The offer is financial. The barrier is psychological. Number 5. Cunnamulla, Queensland. Nobody talks about Cunnamulla. It sits on the Warrego River in southwest Queensland, about 780 kilometres west of Brisbane and 110 kilometres north of the New South Wales border. Population around 1,200 people. It is known for 3 things that do not typically coexist in a single town. A genuine hot artesian springs pool that bubbles up naturally at body temperature, a crime rate that has historically been higher than comparable towns, and house prices that at the lower end sit between $60,000 and $90,000. Cunnamulla belongs on this list because it illustrates something important that the other towns do not show quite as clearly. The incentive here is not a formal grant program. It is pure arithmetic. For someone leaving a rental in southeast Queensland paying $550 per week, $28,600 per year, going nowhere and building nothing, buying a $70,000 house in Cunnamulla with savings they already have eliminates that cost entirely. The savings in rent alone over 5 years exceed the purchase price of the house. That is before council rates of around $800 per year. That is before the age pension surplus. That is before the artesian springs, a natural 40-degree pool that exists because the Great Artesian Basin, the largest and deepest artesian groundwater system in the world, surfaces right here. The honest trade. Cunnamulla has real social challenges. One of the higher per capita crime rates in outback Queensland, and a level of documented social disadvantage that deserves to be acknowledged honestly. This is not a reason to dismiss the town, but it is a reason to visit first, understand the community properly, and do suburb-level research before committing. The annual Cunnamulla Fella Festival, a rodeo and rural gathering that draws people from across southwest Queensland, demonstrates exactly the kind of community that does not give up on itself. But go in knowing what it is and knowing clearly what staying where you are is actually costing you. So why is almost nobody taking it? The research on this question is extensive and consistent. Most Australians, when surveyed, agree that smaller towns and regional centres offer a better quality of life. They agree, and then they stay in the city. The barriers are really financial. They are these. Employment is the first wall. For people under 55 still building careers, the fear of professional irrelevance is real, even where remote work makes the geography genuinely irrelevant. The perception that being physically absent from the city means being professionally absent runs deep and does not respond well to rational argument. Social network is the second wall. Every decade spent in a city adds layers of social infrastructure. Friendships, family proximity, shared history with people and places. Moving regionally means leaving that behind and building something new. For most people, that is harder than any financial calculation. Identity is the third wall, and this one rarely gets discussed directly. Being someone who lives in Sydney or Melbourne carries specific cultural signals. You are a participant in the main event. Moving regionally carries an implicit suggestion, unfair and inaccurate but persistent, that you could not make it work where things happen. Research on young Australians in regional areas found that even those who genuinely preferred to stay in their hometown felt social pressure to leave, because leaving for the city was coded as ambition and staying was coded as settling. That stigma runs in both directions. The fourth barrier is healthcare anxiety, and for older Australians, this one is real rather than psychological. The further from a major hospital you live, the more your existing health situation matters to evaluating any regional option. For people in good health, regional healthcare is often entirely adequate. For people managing serious, ongoing conditions, cardiac, oncological, neurological, the distance calculation changes genuinely and significantly. None of these barriers are irrational. All of them are real, and none of them are insurmountable, but they require honest self-assessment, not just a comparison of house prices. The offer is on the table. Whether you take it depends almost entirely on who you are, where you are in life, and whether you are willing to let go of a story about yourself that the city has been writing on your behalf. The towns are not waiting for permission. They are just waiting.